I read 56 books this year. This is some of them. And of those 56, I've got my top 10 that I'd love to share with you as we wrap up 2025 and go into 2026. I've always been a reader, but I haven't really been a person who reads a lot of books. I started tracking books and how many books I read throughout the year in 2023. And in 2023, I read 22 books. In 2024, I read 41 books. So now in 2025, I read 56. There are days where all I want to do is read, and there's also weeks where I don't pick up a book. So it definitely comes and goes. I am a physical book girly, a Kindle book girly, an audiobook girly. So I'm consuming in a lot of different ways. I use the library. I use Libby a lot. I love the art of book shopping. I love going to bookstores. I love thrifting books. I love finding books I'm looking for in a used bookstore section. And I also just love the ability to go and buy a new book from an independent bookstore. So yeah, I've fallen in with a large population, but I love reading. I love books. And I am so glad that my sister introduced me to BookTube so that I didn't feel weird about reading 56 books and sharing about them on the internet. If I got my numbers right, I read 36 books either on my Kindle or physically in hand, and I listened to 20 audiobooks. So most months I read about 4 books. Some months there were 5-6 book months, especially when I was on vacation. I was able to read a little bit more, and then there were months where there were 2 or 3 books because it just wasn't what I wanted to do. A little bit about the books that I read. I don't read fantasy or dark romance. I tend to read literary fiction, a lot of historical fiction, especially in the World War II era. I read a lot of romance books in that Emily Henry, Abby Jimenez style. And I also read a lot of Christian faith books and nonfiction in personal development, business development, and also I've read a couple memoirs. That was my little here are the books I read moment. My favorite thing about looking through all the books I read is I liked most of the books I read. It was actually hard to pick a top 10 and not just favorite all of them because I had a really good reading year. I enjoyed most of the stories that I read. There were only 3 books I did not finish, and 2 of them were kind of it's just not the right time, and they're still on my to read list. I cheated a little bit because I have 4 honorable mentions, and then I have my top 10, and of those top 10, I have my top. In the honorable mention category, I had to give flowers to The Light We Lost and Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez because they just hooked me on reading in that more romance category. They were very well written love stories and I really enjoyed them. And I found that after I listened to The Light We Lost and read Part of Your World, which was a book I read in a weekend, I wanted more of that. I read more Abby Jimenez. I started Emily Henry after that, and I just really fell into that category. Another honorable mention book is The Color of Law, which is a really tough book to read. So it's kind of hard to describe, but The Color of Law I think is a very important book to read or audiobook and really learn about some of the darker side of what was going on within our government, what kind of caused segregation to last as long as it did. So add it to your list. It's not going to be a happy read, but I think it's really important. Everyone should read that book. A more fun one that kind of falls into this category is I read Believe, The Untold Story of Ted Lasso, which is kind of a collection of interviews put into a book to explain the phenomenon that was Ted Lasso from the development to its height success to its end. And as someone who loves that show, I gobbled it up. I loved the facts. My poor family has to deal with me spitting out random facts about Ted Lasso every time it comes up or every time we watch an episode now. But if you like the show, I would read the book. And then, oh wow, I put a lot in honorable mention category. Apparently I thought it was 4 because I put them all together. I wrote in Adorning the Dark and The Creative Act. This one little byline is Thoughts on Community, Calling, and the Mystery of Making, and it's written by a Christian songwriter. So it leans a little bit towards more of like songwriting and writing, but even as someone who works in a visual art, I very much benefited from reading through this book, so I highly recommend it. And then the Creative Act has kind of gotten a little trendy, which is fine, but you're going to find it on most of the front tables in a bookstore these days, and it is like, the best way I can describe it is like, it's like daily meditation about creating, being creative, what is creating, what is art. I'm gonna cheat. I'm putting this into the honorable mention category too. This is my second copy. I got it for $1 at a used bookstore. I read this book almost every year, or at least one of Bob Goff's books every year. I've read them all, but I reread at least one of them every year. Everybody should read these books. So Love Does, Everybody Always. Those are my top 2 from him, but add that to your list too. Okay, I reworked my pile. The lighting's not great. My glasses are reflecting. We don't care. We're just showing up and we're doing the thing. The top 10 books I read in 2025. We finally got there. I'm going to start with 2 books that made this list, I think, because of the narrators of the audiobook. The Boys in the Boat is a nonfiction story about a U.S. rowing team that, spoilers, wins the Olympics. The reason why I think I really like this book is it's narrated by Edward Herrmann, who plays Richard in Gilmore Girls. And it was one of those things where I'm like, he could read me the dictionary, it would be fine. So I don't know if it's a great read because it's kind of a long nonfiction book, but it's a really interesting story and it's really nice listening to him tell you a story. In that same vein, a fiction book that I think I really enjoyed because of who narrated it was Tom Lake. It's read by Meryl Streep. And you almost believe that this is actually her story because she just fits the main character. She fits the narrator. And it's just, the best way to describe this book is it's just beautiful. It's a very calming, soothing listen. I think it's a good fit if you were a theater kid because it's based around a summer like theater conservatory. But the way this story is told, it's just really beautiful. So if you're looking for a beautiful fiction story, this is it. So those 2 kind of like reach my top 10, but I would be honest to say that I think it's because of who narrated the books. But if you like audiobooks, listening to Meryl Streep tell you a story, great. We Were the Lucky Ones. This is a story about a family during the Holocaust. They are a Jewish family. They do live in Poland, and it is an incredible thing to read because it's real. This really happened, and everything that happens in this story is true. So the title kind of gives you an idea. If learning about World War II, especially in Europe, is interesting to you, I would recommend this book. Totally different topic. The Thursday Murder Club is amazing. It is, I'm not a big like dark thriller person, but I'm beginning to enjoy mystery and thriller a little bit more, and I think that's what I get out of this because it's like a comedic thriller. Mostly that they really are solving a crime. They live in a retirement community, and it is like, you know, hanging out with your grandparents and their friends. So I laughed a lot reading this book. I read 2 of the books in this series this year, and I'm really looking forward to finishing all of the other ones that are out right now. Richard Osman is doing some work with these books. Okay, gosh, a lot of my top books have to do with World War II, and I apologize, but I told you guys that's what I'm interested in. Another book I don't have that I think was just a beautiful story to read is called The Hiding Place. And once again, this one is based in Europe. It's based in Holland during Nazi occupation. And it's, again, a real story. It's a real memoir of what this woman and her family went through. It was hard to read, but as someone who kind of has been dealing with my faith feeling stagnant, I really needed it. I needed to be reminded of what being faithful, even in the most dark moments can look like and the difference it can make on you as a person remaining faithful, but also the people around you. It's a book that will sit with me for a while, so that's why it's on my top list. It might not be everybody else's top. Let's talk about one more audiobook that I listened to that has a great narrator. It's Dan Stevens, and he performs books very well, and I got into Agatha Christie, once again trying to get more into mystery books. And she is the queen for a really good reason. So I listened to And Then There Were None. And I was listening to that a lot while I was going out for my runs. And the number of times I was just like, what the F is going on? It was a good mystery thriller. I thought I had read it in high school, and I very much don't think I actually did because I didn't remember how any of that went to a point. So I realized I didn't read it. But it is such a good story. And if you like that thriller, you don't mind getting a little creeped out while you read a book or listen to a book, she's the queen of mystery for a reason. So I have a few more Agatha Christie books on my list right now. I listened to And Then There Were None, and I also listened to Murder on the Orient Express this year. Both great, but And Then There Were None, man, it messed with me the whole time I was listening to it, and I think about it a lot. Both these books went on vacation with me and were read within about, we'll give it 48 hours. So it was a vacation I planned on reading, but how quickly I read Every Summer After and Beach Read, they were great. I love a good love story, and I don't know, the pacing of Every Summer After, the story, the narration, this was like, I am like obsessed with Carly Fortune, and I will be sad when I have read all the books that she has out, because the ones I read this year were like stunning to read and just really beautifully written. And I'm a lake girly, so I love a lake book, which is also how Beach Read gets into the list, because I always thought Beach Read would be a beach, like the ocean. So I was like, oh, I gotta read it when I go to Long Beach Island. I read it while I was in Key Largo, but it's again based in a lake, but I read this book in about 24 hours too. So just great stories that I wanted to read. I loved the story, I loved the pacing. All right, we're gonna wrap up. You're supposed to pick like one favorite book. I'm not doing that. My last two books are my two favorite books of 2025. There are a lot of people's top books of 2025, and I don't care that I'm sharing it because this is true for me. I will start with Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I can't say her name, but I love her books. And I bought this like the week it came out. It came out in June. I bought it as my birthday present. I did not read it until October. And it was just, as I read it, I was engaged. I didn't want to put it down. I looked forward to picking it back up. And like the simple sentence I wrote when I was like, why is this my favorite book, is that's how you write a story. That's just how I felt. I'm like, that's how you write a story. That's how you engage a reader. That's how you keep people turning the page. And that's how you make someone cry at the end. So I just remember closing the book being like, yeah, that's the kind of book I want to read. And the last one, this book is probably one of my favorite books in the sense that I think it's a great book and a lot of people enjoyed it this summer, but it felt like the right book at the right time. It was a female main character I could really relate to in like a scary way. She was a photographer. The camera she used is the same film camera I own. She went through a breakup from a long-term relationship, something I'm still working through. So, and she's in her 30s. So one golden summer, I read it at the beginning of summer and I just said, this is me. And I'd started on an audiobook and I was a couple chapters in when I realized it was one of those books that I really wanted to physically read. So I went out and I bought a copy of it. And I felt like I was one of a million people reading it at the same time. And I don't care, because it was a great, fun love story, and just the ability to see myself in the story, to let myself pretend it was me. I'm a lake person, so I was just like, do I need to go have a golden summer? Like, do I need to go move to a lake for a couple weeks and take a break from it all? And while I couldn't do that because I'm a wedding photographer and I had weddings all summer, I really enjoyed the escape that was reading One Golden Summer. And just really, I wrote it down. It was the right book at the right time for me. Read it in a week. Loved every minute of it.